You'd think after a scandal that massive, most people would disappear, lay low, and try to rebuild quietly. But not Ned Fulmer. Because somehow, he's doing the exact opposite. He's back again, and this time, he's not just revisiting the cheating scandal, he's revealing details that honestly make the entire situation look even worse. And the internet? Yeah, they're starting to ask one brutal question. Why does he keep doing this to himself? For a while, it actually looked like Ned was fading out. There was a stretch where he stopped posting, went quiet, and people assumed that was it. No comeback, no big rebrand, just a slow exit after one of the most public downfalls on YouTube. But then, out of nowhere, he pops back up. Not just on his own podcast, but sitting down on other shows like a full media re-entry. And instead of avoiding the scandal, he leans straight into it again. And that's where things start to feel off, because most people expected one tell-all, one explanation, and then silence. But that's not what's happening here. Every time he speaks, he adds something new, something deeper, something that makes people go, wait, why would you admit that? And what he revealed this time, that's where everything shifted.
The lady you're cheating with,
Yeah.
is she married or does she have family or is there anyone in her life?
She was engaged.
She was engaged.
Yeah. And part of what was so destructive is her fiance actually caught us like early on, and then we stopped for a while, and then
And he didn't tell your wife?
No.
How early on?
Pretty much right at the beginning.
When you say caught you, how did he catch you?
Like saw some stuff on her phone. Like,
And did he call you or confront you?
Yep.
What did he say?
I don't.
Did he see you? Was
He
it to your
was-
face or did he?
Up until now, there was one part of the story he mostly avoided. Alex, the person at the center of the entire situation, who also happened to be his employee. That detail alone already made things messy, not just morally, but professionally. The power dynamic, the workplace environment, it turned a bad situation into something way more complicated. And for the longest time, it seemed like he was intentionally leaving her out of the conversation, maybe to protect her privacy, or maybe to avoid making things worse. But now, that line is gone. Because for the first time, he starts sharing details about her side of the story. And that's when things take a turn nobody expected.
We had even worked together back at BuzzFeed, so we'd known each other for the better part of 8 years or
Got
so.
it.
I don't really remember, but he was very upset, and so it was like, oh
And you stopped for a bit, but you didn't stop.
yeah. Eventually, we started seeing each other again.
And how would you get away with it?
We went on a lot of business trips.
Okay, you're not sneaking here or there. You're going on business
She's
trips.
the producer that is like setting
Right there.
everything up, and I don't know.
According to him, this situation didn't spiral overnight. It actually started unraveling way earlier than people thought. He revealed that Alex's fiancé caught them right at the beginning. Not months later, not after rumors, but at the very start. Apparently, he found something on her phone, messages or evidence that made it undeniable. And instead of things blowing up publicly right then, it stayed contained, but barely. Because her fiancé didn't just sit quietly, he confronted Ned directly, called him out, and made it clear he knew exactly what was going on.
The ladies' situation, and is he coming after you again because he already fucking said, "Hey, man,
We definitely did that weekend.
he tried to show up where you were."
Well, he threatened me and called me and stuff, but
And for a moment, it actually worked. They stopped. Everything paused. Which, for a second, makes you think maybe that was the wake-up call. Maybe that's where it ended. But it wasn't. Because after all of that, they started again. That's the part that really sticks with people. They didn't just make a mistake and get caught. They got caught, stopped, and then chose to go back into it anyway. And according to Ned, this went on for months. Not in secretive one-off moments, but during business trips, travel, work-related situations that gave them the perfect cover, which completely changes how people see it. Because now, it doesn't feel impulsive, it feels planned. And that's where his explanation starts to clash with the reality people are hearing. Because while he's describing confusion and emotional struggle, the timeline sounds calculated. And eventually, all of it caught up to him in the worst way possible.
I tell my ex-wife that I want to work through things and cut off contact with the affair partner.
And how would you do that if you're employed together? So are you quitting a job? Is she quitting a job? Or how does that work?
I don't.
You didn't
That
even,
didn't.
you're like,
I
whatever,
was
I'm
like,
just
it
going to do
doesn't
whatever
matter
the
if I
fuck.
have to work from home for the next, I don't know. It doesn't.
It didn't end quietly. it didn't stay hidden. It exploded publicly. Fans spotted them together. Photos started circulating, messages got sent, and before he could control the narrative, it was already out there. And the hardest part? His wife didn't find out from him. She found out from the internet, from strangers. That detail alone completely changed how people reacted to the situation. Because now it wasn't just about what happened, it was about how it came out. And while all of this was unfolding, there's something else he admitted that caught people off guard. He didn't think it would cost him everything. Not his career, not his position. He genuinely believed he could fix things and keep going like nothing happened. But reality hit differently.
Oh, was her mom and dad together you did this?
It was, yeah.
And how did that go?
I think they accepted my apology and took their cues from their daughter. So I think, they were hurt, but also supportive of the kind of work that we were doing together to build a new sense of family life.
Mm-hmm.
Because when he looks back now, his explanation is complicated. He claims that at the time, he didn't fully realize how serious it was, that he convinced himself it wasn't that bad, that there were certain boundaries in his relationship, and somehow, in his mind, this didn't completely cross them. And yeah, that's the part where people really start questioning things. Because even he admits now, it wasn't true. It was something he told himself to justify what was happening, a kind of self-created version of reality where the consequences didn't fully exist yet. But listening to that explanation now, a lot of people aren't buying it. Because when you line up the timeline, the secrecy, the risks, the fact that someone else already confronted him, it's hard to believe he didn't know. And that's why the conversation shifts to something deeper, not just what happened, but why. His version of why is about pressure. He talks about the image he built, the perfect relationship, the perfect family, the wife guy persona that everyone knew him for. And over time, he says that image started to feel fake, like he was performing a version of his life that didn't match reality anymore. Posting happy moments, showing a polished relationship, while behind the scenes, things weren't as perfect as they looked. And according to him, that disconnect started building up until eventually it turned into something he didn't handle the right way. That's his explanation.
In general, I always felt this pressure to post and to show, the more rosy side of my relationship and family. And it over time it became just really exhausting and kind of made it further and further away from the truth of what was happening in my life and in my relationship. And I think that disconnect really was something that was hard for me to deal with.
And what was really happening?
I mean, it was not as perfect as show it on Instagram. I don't think anyone's relationship is.
That's why we're also this whole show.
But not everyone sees it that way. Because there's another angle people keep bringing up, that maybe it wasn't just pressure, maybe it was ego. A desire to step outside the image he felt trapped in, to be seen differently, to break away from the identity that made him famous in the first place. And while that's just speculation, it's a theory that keeps coming up, especially as he continues to talk about it. Because here's the thing that really confuses people. He keeps coming back to it, again and again and again. Every podcast, every interview, every new appearance, there's always another layer, another detail, another explanation.
Under a delusion that it wasn't as big of a deal as it was, there were some...
Why? What made you think that?
Well, there were ways that we had talked about certain boundaries and things that would be okay versus not. And, this was not, but it was close. And I was... delusionally thinking oh, well, since we've talked about these other things, that this is probably fine. And I think there's a lot of different ways that when you're cheating, or when I was cheating specifically, that I lied to myself to make it seem more okay in my mind.
And at this point, the reactions are split. Some people think he's trying to take accountability. Others think he's trying to control the narrative. And then there are people who believe something else entirely, that this is the only thing keeping him relevant, that without the scandal, the attention disappears. Now, to be clear, that's just what people are saying online. It's speculation. But when the same story keeps getting retold with new details every time, it raises questions. Because usually, moving on means talking about something less, not more. And yet, here we are. So now it leaves one final question hanging. Is this honesty, or is it something else? Because every time he speaks, it doesn't seem to fix anything. It doesn't clear things up. If anything, it just makes people look at the situation differently, and not in a better way. So what do you think? Is he owning his past, or slowly making it worse every time he tries to explain it?